You're watching Republic.
You're watching Republic TV with me, Akanksha Khajure, and this evening we bring you top 6 stories of the day, 6 stories that matter and 6 stories that you should know about. The focus, of course, is on the crucial SCO Summit. Remember how red carpet was rolled out for the Prime Minister as he arrived in fact, China, and then he had a very crucial bilateral meeting with the Chinese President, and just a while back, in fact, he received a warm welcome at the SCO Summit, and present there was Russian President Putin, Chinese President, and of course the First Lady as well. Have a look at the visuals. More about the crucial SCO Summit. 2 leaders, 2 powers, 1 uneasy history. In fact, in China, the story was not just about a handshake. It was about whether Asia's 2 giants can reset the rules of engagement. With the United States raising the tariff and the global order in flux, the Modi and the Chinese President meeting goes far beyond the symbolism. It's about whether India and China can turn rivalry into responsibility and friction into the framework. And then, in fact, the opening statement that it come in signal stability between the relationship of the 2 countries. Have a look for more.
First came the historic handshake, a handshake that could rattle Washington and spook President Donald Trump in the middle of his tariff tirade. The elephant and the dragon locked in one frame. On the sidelines of the SCO Summit in Tianjin, the 2 leaders sat down for over an hour of high-stakes diplomacy. Their meeting, set against the backdrop of rising global trade tensions, US tariffs squeezing Beijing, and China's fragile ties with Washington. Both leaders picked up from where they left in Kazan last year, with the big focus on restoring trust, rebuilding ties, and above all, peace on the border. PM Modi, in his opening remarks, declared that an atmosphere of peace and stability now exists after disengagement. He further spoke about the resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra and direct flights as symbols of normalization. The Prime Minister stressed that the destinies of 2.8 billion people are tied together, and India remains committed to moving forward on mutual trust, respect and sensitivity.
हमारे सहयोग से दोनों देशों के 2.8 बिलियन लोगों के हित जुड़े हुए हैं। इससे पूरी मानवता के कल्याण का मार्ग भी प्रशस्त होगा। परस्पर विश्वास, सम्मान और संवेदनशीलता के आधार पर हम अपने संबंधों को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध हैं।
Xi Jinping, welcoming PM Modi to China, called the friendship between the 2 neighbors the right choice. He invoked India and China's legacy as ancient civilizations, pillars of the global south. Xi said both nations must think strategically and long-term and shoulder their historic responsibility to defend multilateralism, push for multipolar world, and champion peace and prosperity across Asia and beyond. This meeting is not just optics. It comes as India and China mark 75 years of diplomatic ties, a milestone moment in their fraught history. And tomorrow, PM Modi joins the full SCO deliberations in Tianjin as the world watches whether the handshake of the elephant and the dragon rewrites the script of Asian geopolitics.
And Republic TV is on the ground getting you minute-to-minute details of this crucial SCO summit where Prime Minister is also present. My colleague, our senior editor Shravan Sen, is on the ground getting us the live analysis and the ground reports. Have a look.
Just the big takeaways from the meeting that has taken place. One, it has gone beyond the scheduled time. The scheduled time was about 40 minutes is what we were told by the Ministry of External Affairs, the delegation which is here. In fact, that has gone beyond that. As far as India is concerned, these are the three areas that they have largely spoken about. One, it is with regards to trade cooperation. Second, with regards to the security roadmap. Third, in terms of the SCO expansion. The SCO expansion also happens to be another key area as to how the SCO cooperation is going to take place between the other partner countries. This is what has essentially come across from the Indian side. The Chinese, I haven't really been able to get my hands on with regards to the details coming in. In a short while from now, I'll be able to break it down. But once again, harping on the fact that this is an old civilization. It's the civilization ties between India and China, which have only strengthened over a period of time. They're certainly hoping that this will be a renewed push that has essentially been made by the Chinese to try and not only salvage this relationship, but hoping that this time it is going to be a lasting relationship minus the kind of trust deficit that we have essentially had. For all our viewers who are tuning in right now, let me quickly take you through all that has developed so far. This morning, Prime Minister Modi began the SCO Summit with a bilateral meeting that took place with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. And as it turned out, it has now become the biggest headline for the Chinese media. In fact, multiple courtesy calls have also been made by President Xi Jinping, but the headline for the Chinese media has certainly been the bilateral talk between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. The big takeaways from the bilateral. Number one, with regards to the situation at the LAC. There has been a forward movement, but at the same time, there is much more to be done. That clarity essentially now coming in. President Xi essentially indicating that this is a historical tie. This is the 75th year of the diplomatic relationship between India and China. Remember, India was one of the first few countries to recognize having a diplomatic relationship with China, taking cognizance of that. President Xi reiterating the fact that it is time to take it forward, bring in more democracy within multiple institutions where both the countries are essentially working on. The Chinese essentially harping on the fact that it is time for both the giants in the Asian market to come together and tackle the global headwinds at this point in time. Now, just to give you a sense of what's really happening around me, there is a lot of buzz with regards to the bilateral talk that has taken place, and of course then Russia basically now stepping in. The one bilateral that the Chinese media are also closely tracking is the meeting that's going to take place between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Modi, that is scheduled for tomorrow. There could be another surprise bilateral meeting that that can take place with another SCO partner as far as India is concerned, but that clarity may come in a while from now. What's really happening with Pakistan? If that's the question that you are asking, let me just now tell you that Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has actually landed in Tianjin along with the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. So far, there has been no meeting between President Xi and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. In fact, the indication that came in that Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif in all likelihood would be meeting the Chinese Premier Li Qiang. Now, that confirmation not coming in as to whether at all there is a scheduled bilateral meeting between Chinese President Xi Jinping and Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. Also, in China right now, there is a huge buzz with regards to the victory parade that's going to take place on 3rd of September, where 26 foreign leaders would be there. In fact, the Russian president is extending his stay here in China, and he would be participating in the victory day. So a lot essentially happening right now in Tianjin, where the SCO Summit is underway. Republic TV is live from Tianjin, getting you some of the finest experts joining you, decoding what's really happening, and of course the big meetings that are taking place, and how exactly will the West really respond to the growing solidarity within the global South. This is exactly what the West has largely been harping on, the fact that if these two countries are basically trying to come together, it's also because of what they are witnessing at this stage, particularly because of the doubling down coming in. But as far as the Chinese are concerned, and the Indian delegation also, one point that they have made it very clear, that the number of talks that have essentially taken place with regards to border management, over 30 meetings have actually taken place as far as the commander level talks are concerned. Yes, there are a certain sticking point in terms of disengagement at certain finger points, and whether at all we are going to be able to achieve a status quo ante is something that is being worked upon. But having said that, one clarity coming in from the Chinese side is that they also essentially believe that the focus or the resources that they've essentially employed, particularly in the border areas, is something that cannot be sustained. It's not sustainable at this stage, because remember, in the next few months, when basically China comes up with their next few years plan, which is something that they are watching very closely, because President Xi and the party essentially is going to lay out the roadmap for the Chinese. The Chinese want to make strategic changes, and that changes requires them to bring about a complete change in the way they are essentially looking at the border management, something that India is cognizant about, and perhaps in the days to come, in the months to come, that is where the key advantage basically lies, particularly when the focus of the Chinese is now completely shifting towards another aspect altogether. Right now, if at all we are talking about a multipolar order, in that multipolar order, the Chinese essentially want, and that's the signaling that they have done over the last few months, and that is the reason why the overtures that have actually been made by the Chinese is not something that we have actually seen in the last 24 or 48 hours, or even in the last couple of weeks. It's actually happened over several months put together, when these multiple level talks have taken place, where they've been able to identify the sticking point, the bone of contention right now, and they've been able to come out with certain sort of a resolution which may not see an immediate impact. We may not see an immediate impact, but it may eventually bear the fruit.
In fact, earlier today, Prime Minister Narendra Modi met with the Chinese president on the sidelines of the SCO Summit during the first visit to China in the last 7 years. And tomorrow, all eyes will be on the crucial meeting with the Chinese president. This is very important, especially in the backdrop of the tariff that has been imposed by the US President Donald Trump because of the purchase of Russian oil by India. And this meeting is something that everybody will be waiting for. Have a look.
The coming together of India, Russia and China at the SCO marks one of the most significant geopolitical moments. The Modi-Putin-Xi troika is being closely watched worldwide, symbolizing formation of a new axis of power. Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed in Tianjin yesterday for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, his first visit to China in 7 years. This morning, Modi held bilateral talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. In his opening remarks, the Prime Minister thanked Xi Jinping for the resumption of the Kailash Mansarovar pilgrimage and stressed that future relations must be based on mutual trust, respect and sensitivity.
हमारे सहयोग से दोनों देशों के 2.8 बिलियन लोगों के हित जुड़े हुए हैं। इससे पूरी मानवता के कल्याण का मार्ग भी प्रशस्त होगा। परस्पर विश्वास, सम्मान और संवेदनशीलता के आधार पर हम अपने संबंधों को आगे बढ़ाने के लिए प्रतिबद्ध है।
Xi Jinping welcomed the dialogue, saying that the dragon and elephant must dance, signaling a transformation in India-China ties.
当前，世界百年变局加速演进，国际形势变乱交织。中国和印度是两大东方文明组合，是世界上人口最多的两个国家，也是全球南方重要成员。坚决的造福两国利益，促进发展中国家团结振兴，推动人类社会进步的重要责任。做睦邻友好的朋友，相互成就的伙伴，实现龙象共舞，应当是中印双方。
Tomorrow, the spotlight shifts to Modi's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The world is watching closely as New Delhi and Moscow, longtime partners in the global south, prepare for crucial bilateral talks. The summit is being seen as a strategic show of strength as Beijing, Moscow, and New Delhi come together at a time when Washington is on a tariff rampage. The Modi-Xi engagement has set the stage now. The Modi-Putin talks could be the next big moment in reshaping global alignments. The India-Russia-China troika emerges as a counterweight in the new world order.
And from Prime Minister's first visit to China in the last 7 years to President Putin's high-profile presence and Chinese presence playing host, all eyes are on the emerging troika. With global trade disputes, shifting alliances, the SCO has become the platform where Russia, India and China bloc is once again in sharp focus. Here's more.
Talking about one of the largest SCO summit that's going to take place in Tianjin.
The Asian continent's biggest geopolitical summit, hailed as the most significant of the year, is here. The SCO Summit is supposed to take place tomorrow in Tianjin. From Prime Minister Modi's first visit to China in 7 years to Russian President Putin's present, the event is drawing global attention. Amid this high-profile gathering, the one subject dominating the conversation is the emerging troika of India, Russia and China. The world caught an early glimpse of this dynamic last year at the Kazan BRICS Summit. And now, the powerful trio returns to the stage at the SCO. It isn't just the presence of Prime Minister Modi, President Xi and President Putin that commands attention. It's the sheer strength and potential of this triad. Together, they represent $53.9 trillion in GDP purchasing power parity, nearly a third of global output. Their combined exports exceed $5 trillion with foreign reserves of $4.7 trillion, 38% of the world's total. With a population of 3.1 billion, they count for roughly 38% of humanity. Collectively, the military expenditure stands at $549 billion, one-fifth of global defense spending, while their energy consumption reaches 35% of the world's total. The idea of Russia-India-China cooperation was first floated in 1991 when post-Soviet Russia sought to counterbalance US influence. Over the decades, China's rapid economic rise and its widening rift with Washington have drawn Moscow and Beijing closer, making them among the world's closest strategic partners. Russia has repeatedly tried to strengthen the RIC bloc, but deep differences between India and China, from the Doklam standoff in 2017 to the Galwan clash in 2020, severely eroded mutual trust. For this reason, the RIC has long remained more of a potential alliance than a materialized one. However, the Ukraine war of 2022 pushed Russia to pivot further towards Asia. Combined with China's domestic economic slowdown and a fragile understanding between India and China along the LAC has opened some space for limited approachment. But beyond these adjustments, it's a recent downturn in US-India ties that has truly revived the RIC framework.
On Saturday, my administration helped broker a full and immediate ceasefire, I think a permanent one, between India and Pakistan, ending a dangerous conflict of two nations with lots of nuclear weapons. and they were going at it hot and heavy, and it was seemingly not going to stop.
I want to make three things clear. One, there was no leader, nobody anywhere in the world who asked India to stop its operations. This is something the Prime Minister also said.
Amid the ongoing tariff disputes and President Trump's controversial ceasefire claims, New Delhi today finds itself at odds with Washington. Against this backdrop, the SCO Summit offers not just an opportunity for the Global South to strengthen its collective voice, but also a moment for the RIC bloc to revitalize and shape the emerging multipolar order.
Now let me go across to my colleague Kruthat, who joins us from the newsroom with more details. Kruthat, for clarity of our viewers, take us through what happened on the day first of the SCO Summit and what can be expected tomorrow.
It was a very normal day, but a lot of bilateral meetings took place today. We saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi first holding a bilateral meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping earlier today. The meeting was supposed to be for about 40 minutes, however it went on, and there was about 60 minutes of a long conversation between the Chinese President and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The opening remarks of both the leaders reflected on what is this bilateral relationship going to be all about going forward, while Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated the points that he had also raised in the Kazan summit in BRICS, on the sidelines of BRICS, which was his first bilateral meeting with the Chinese president since the Galwan clash, in which he had reiterated that India's partnership with China will be on the basis of mutual trust, mutual respect and mutual sensibilities. On the other hand, we saw the Chinese president quite eager for normalization of ties with India, saying that both of us should not look at each other as rivals but as partners. And in fact, he even said that this is a very historic occasion where both the leaders, for the welfare of both the nations and their people and their collective responsibility, should come together to uphold the values of multilateralism in a multipolar world order. So on one hand, you see China really trying to extend into a conversation where they can normalize ties with India, talks of trade and all of that also happening on the sidelines, whereas Prime Minister Narendra Modi reiterated the progress that has been made since the Kazan summit and all the things that have subsequently happened, be it the resumption of the Mansarovar Yatra or the direct flight routes that have been quite recently been announced that they will be opened. And at the same time, he also acknowledged the fact that there have been two special representative level talks that have been taken place, one where NSA Doval visited Beijing last year, and then recently the Wang Yi visit to New Delhi just a couple of weeks ago ahead of the SCO Summit. So those progresses were also discussed. That is on the bilateral front. Apart from that, we also saw the Secretary of the Secretariat of the CCP also meet, the Kai Chi meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That was a very surprising meeting. A top member of the CCP meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi there. Apart from that, just moments ago, we saw in the evening now the official reception has resumed and the group family photo of the SCO was taken, and we saw front and center was President Putin alongside Chinese President Xi Jinping. On the right side was Prime Minister Narendra Modi standing there with on his right was Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus, and on his right was Recep Tayyip Erdogan of Turkey. So those were the visuals that we are seeing, and any moment from now we'll also see the inside visuals perhaps of the reception that was taken place. Those are the visuals of the reception that took place just a few moments ago. That was the group family photo there. You see President Putin standing in the center, who's flanked by Chinese President Xi Jinping. In the background, you see all the observer nations. In the front row, you see all the member nations of the SCO standing together. And just moments from now, we are also expecting visuals coming from inside the reception. Remember, last time it was in the Kazan summit, that was the BRICS forum, where we saw the visuals of President Putin, who was the hosting entity back then, alongside Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping in a group photograph, enjoying cultural performances and having dinner. Whether we will see a repeat of that today is something that a lot of journalists are anticipating. It remains to be seen. However, it's going to be a closure of the day in Tianjin after this reception. Tomorrow morning, we start early on at 7:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time is the time at which the Leaders Summit is expected to start in Tianjin. Remember, they are 2.5 hours ahead of us, so that will be at around 10 a.m. there. And subsequently, we're expecting the initial remarks of Prime Minister Narendra Modi also at the SCO forum at about 7:30 a.m. tomorrow morning. Subsequently, at about 9:30 a.m. IST is when the key bilateral meeting, the second known bilateral meeting of Prime Minister Narendra Modi on this visit with President Putin of Russia is expected to take place. And all eyes will also be on that very important meeting, because yesterday we also had Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky dining Prime Minister Narendra Modi to give an update on the conversations that were held in Washington vis-a-vis the Russia-Ukraine war, and whether Prime Minister Narendra Modi can reiterate some of those points to President Putin, as both the leaders have a very cordial interpersonal relationship. But it's also going to be a very important bilateral meeting from the point of view that Russian President Putin is also expected to visit India later this year in the month of December, and only a couple of months remain. So a lot to go through in the India and Russia bilateral relationship. Obviously, the Indian imports of Russian oil continues to remain a bitter factor between India and the United States vis-a-vis the tariff war situation. And amidst this, whether India and Russia announce any new bilateral progress being made is something that will remain to seen, as this is going to be a third high-profile meeting. Earlier, we have seen NSA Ajit Doval and Dr. Jaishankar both call on President Putin while they were in Moscow, and now President Putin meeting on the sidelines of the SCO with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, with a future visit set for him to visit India. It's going to be a very power-packed day tomorrow morning, and Republic will be reporting live and breaking. But those are the updates, briefly, what we have tracked from Tianjin all throughout the day, Akansha.
Absolutely. So all eyes will be on that crucial meeting between the Prime Minister and the Russian President as well. Thanks so much, Krutar, for all the updates. We'll keep coming back to you for more on this. And now highlights of the special welcome for the Prime Minister today in Tianjin. Have a look at these visuals coming in from China.
Amity has been ranked amongst the top 3% universities globally, a testimony to Amity's globally benchmarked quality.
Sarah, this is your space, play it your way.
प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला। भारत की अपनी दुकान इंडिया सोना।